What's up, dummies? All right, let's go through the types of contracts. So the unilateral and bilateral contracts pretty simple. It is very much like, is this just an offer where the other party um, has to perform or do something, and then that's when it becomes a contract. That's unilateral. Bilateral is where kind of both parties have to make a promise in order for something to happen. There are executory contracts. Those are those that have been partially performed, but with performance remaining to be completed by one or both of the parties. So the example in the text is B delivers the 50 dozen eggs on time, but A has not yet paid. At this point, the bilateral contract is also executory. So, we're expecting the other party to do what they said that they're going to do. And if that doesn't happen, well, then we've got a breach of contract case. Executed contracts are those that have been fully performed by both parties. The transaction is complete. Nothing remains to be done. So executory, we're still waiting on the other party to do what they said they're going to do. Where an executed is when a fully completed contract is done, or in this case, executed. There are express contracts and implied contracts. So express contracts are those that are where the terms are stated expressly or explicitly. Okay, we call that the express statements are those that are laid out very, very clearly, almost always in writing. Okay, implied contracts are one that are created by law and don't necessarily even have to be written, but those are things that are like implied duties, or in the case of, let's say, a residential lease where there's a landlord leasing a property to a tenant, there's an implied warrant of habitability, right? I mean, that is the type of burden that is put upon the landlord by law, even if it's not actually in the lease. Okay, there are formal and informal contracts. Formal are contracts that are have to meet certain requirements as established by law. Those are what we call negotiable instruments. Okay, all checks, as in if you were to write a check out of a checkbook or cash a paycheck, those are negotiable instruments. Those are contracts, and they all follow the same format. If you notice, you've never really seen a check that is drastically different than any other check that you've ever seen. And those are formal contracts. Informal contracts may be written, they may be verbal, but they don't have to follow a particular format as prescribed by law as a check would. Okay. There are valid contracts, voidable contracts, and void contracts. Okay, a valid contract meets all of the necessary elements of a contract. A voidable contract is one that may have some defective element. It doesn't have all of the other elements that we've talked about, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's automatically void. They could still be treated as valid if both parties agree that they want to move forward with the rest of the contract despite the defect. Void contracts are those which are illegal and thereby unenforceable, right? So those that violate the statute of frauds, they have some illegal substance at their core. Those are automatically void. They are not enforceable. If the parties go through with it and then there's some breach, it doesn't matter because there wasn't really a contract to breach.